Welcome back to 7 Seconds or More. This is episode 15. As always, I am your host, Peter Howarth. I'm joined, as usually, by Duncan Adele. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Excited for tomorrow.
Very excited. The draft is tomorrow, and we have a very special guest, friend of the show, Ryan Moreau. Ryan, how are you?
Hi, Peter. Hi, Duncan. It's a pleasure to be here taking my podcast virginity. So, very, very excited.
Whoa.
We're okay. Starting strong. Ryan is our resident bracketologist, so we wanted to bring him in to because I don't know, I don't watch a lot of college basketball. Ryan watches more than probably all of us combined, so it just someone else who kind of knows what they're talking about here. So off the top, I wanted to go through the top three guys because guess what? It's super interesting, and we're going to talk about them for the next, hopefully, like 12, 15 years, and about why didn't this guy go number one? And they're going to be forever linked and forever compared. And we see this all the time. Luka and Trae Young always compared because they were traded for each other. Jason Tatum and Fultz and Lonzo Ball because why didn't Tatum go number one? And Fultz was traded. The picks were traded between him and Tatum, and I think there could be a little bit of this. There's been sort of rumors of people trying to get up to one of the spots in the top three to grab their guy, but even if they're not, we will always be like, why didn't this guy go over that guy? So just starting at the top, my top with Chet Holmgren, whom I think should be the number one pick. He probably won't be. Jabari Smith has been the consensus guy that people believe Orlando is going to take, even if the betting odds have sort of shifted kind of dramatically somewhat over the last couple of days. I watched a lot of Chet tape, and what has really stuck out to me is he's super long and fluid. Like, fluid is the word I would use to describe him because he has a sort of Draymond Green or Al Horford ability to push the pace in transition, but not recklessly because he can also find the right person for a look if he gets double teamed down low. He can also finish through contact and fluidity at the rim. He doesn't just throw up bricks and go down recklessly. And even though he's a very slight guy, he's very skinny frame, so he'll get the Kevin Durant comparisons. He also has a great pull up three transition game. He kind of pulls up like Anthony Davis or Kevin Durant in transition with his pull up jumper. And I
And the
just
defense.
the defense. I mean, he's
Yeah.
he's a legit 7 foot, super long arms, power forward body, and he can recover quickly with his great footwork and being able to predict where defenders go.
Yeah,
Um,
that's something we've noticed a lot. Like I feel like recently in the NBA is you have to be a two-way now. You can't be like just a scorer. Like players like Gary Payton, he's being valued for his defense. Although he's a pretty solid scorer. Defense is winning championships, so it's something that Chet does very well.
I mean, just looking at Chet, based off the way he plays, you can see him fitting with any team. He's that type of player that every team would want. Someone who's long, who can do anything and can really fit with anyone. Ryan, when you've been watching his games at Gonzaga, even through the NCAA tournament where they had a bit of a untimely exit, what stood out to you? Because Gonzaga hasn't really had a guy that special of a talent because they had Jalen Suggs, for instance, last year, who's a great individual player, but he's not like this freakish athlete who like jumps off the page like Chet does.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Chet, just given his length and his size, being 7 foot tall, and especially being in the league that Gonzaga is in, he was definitely able to just completely dominate. There's no players in the WCC that can really match up with him. Um, so I guess the big question for him is that like he has the 3 point shooting ability, and he was in a great system with Mark Few. So I guess it's just can he build the size and be sort of that true versatile big man in the NBA. Be able to play. You can't, or he was a special player on defense this year. Does that translate in the NBA when he's playing with players who can definitely deal with him better with his size and length.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up there, Ryan. I saw something on Twitter. Um, Granted, it was an Auburn fan, so they're a little biased, but they're breaking down some of Chet's stats versus ranked teams and unranked teams last season. And I believe against unranked teams, he was like 44% from three, and then ranked teams, he was a measly 25% from three. So you know, every team's ranked in the NBA. There's not going to be any like easy confidence boosters like in the WCC. So it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts to that and whether he'll need adjustment or whether he'll need huge adjustments for the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
sort of
mean,
the. No, you can go ahead, Ryan.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he's so young still, and he's got, I guess, time to build. I don't know if it's just a mental thing where, playing in the big games that there was more pressure on himself, or if it was just that these bigger schools have bigger bodies and better talent that are able to shut him down. But I did not know that, Duncan. So that was actually interesting to hear that his shooting percentage dropped so much. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's weird because I feel like the obvious choice for first is Chet, and so by the Magic maybe not taking Chet, then it'll be like an obvious blunder that we'll look back on, and be like Tatum, like, oh, how did Chet not go number one? But then again, did Tingus Pingus go number one? Kristaps Porzingis?
And now you went like number
No,
4.
number four. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's one of my favorite videos ever. The Knicks fan, like when he gets drafted, he's like, "Who's Tingus Pingus?"
We've seen it time and time again. When Jaylen Brown was drafted, the Boston Garden booed. If you go through my Twitter history at Tweets and Pete, you can find I did not like the Jaylen Brown pick. I wanted them to trade it for Jimmy Butler, which I mean wouldn't have been the worst thing. But
No.
it's very true what both of you are saying about Chet's competition, because it's you look at Gonzaga every year, they have like one or two losses going to the tournament, and you're like, how is anyone beating this team? It's because they play in a really bad conference. Now that doesn't take away from Chet and Drew Timmy and Jalen Suggs and everyone else that's gone through Mark Few's system, that they're very good players. But when you hit that wall in the tournament and you start playing super competitive games in super short time, like quick turnarounds, and it's a lot for 18, 19-year-olds. But I think Chet, if you're gonna, you know, take any nitpicks from him, it is the frame, the small frame, and it is the that competition. I think he'll adjust. Everything I've seen, he seems like a very driven guy. I saw a video of him playing on like a U19 or U18, U17 USA game where he had a great spin move on Evan Mobley, and he cooked him pretty good. And Evan Mobley, someone we think very highly of, somewhat similar as a long, skinny guy, but Mobley played admirably last year in Cleveland. But I do have just one more question for you, Duncan. What do you mean by like the obvious pick? Do you mean in terms of like this guy should have the most potential, or
Yeah.
or is it just like you think this guy's really good?
Well, Chet's the one we've been talking about for like a year. I feel like he's just like his brand name versus Jabari. Like not everybody knows who Jabari Smith is, and not that that's a reason to pick Chet, but it just makes it feel like it's more obvious. And also, I was just looking at some Gonzaga stats. Um, Even though he had the drop in 3-point percentage, they were still 11-4 in quad one. So their 4 losses in the season came there. So even though like against ranked teams, like his 3-point percentage went down, they're still winning those games. So, you know, I feel like percentages don't matter if you get the win. It's all about the win. But yeah, no, kind of that's what I'm saying is like he. I don't even know. He just seems like the obvious pick. He's the unicorn. You're not going to see someone like him again, and that just makes you want to get him.
He certainly does jump off the page, and it is someone who you don't want to get wrong. And the Magic have in a way, been fortunate not to have the first pick in recent years, because you can't mess up like the 7th pick in the same way you can mess up the first pick. Then again, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot like mess up picking Zion or LeBron. So I guess there's both sides of that coin. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what the Magic go with there.
Yeah. Have you guys, before we move on from Chet, have you heard of the rumors about him and his agent? Um, Not rumors, reports rather, that he was withholding his physical from certain teams, and that in the reports it was rumored that the Magic were one team that he withheld his physical in an attempt to not get drafted by them.
Hmm. I did not know that.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
did
saw
not know
that. I
that.
can find. Yeah, if you look it up, there's some articles about it, but at the same time, I was kind of astounded to hear he didn't want to play with the Magic because I saw him saying he wanted to play with Jalen again, and then in some other places, apparently he's talked about how he wants to play with the Thunder. To me, would be I don't know if it would be less desirable or not. I mean, Oklahoma City versus Orlando, just looking at it like that, I'd much rather be in Orlando. But it's interesting, kind of the politics behind where you're trying to place yourself in the draft.
Yeah, I don't know. We've seen it a lot through the years. A lot of different players, different sports. I mean, John Elway notoriously didn't want to play for the Colts. Eli Manning didn't want to play for the Chargers. Um, it's happened in basketball. There's not one that jumps off the page immediately. Or Jason Tatum, because I talk about Jason Tatum a lot. He infamously wanted to go to Phoenix because he liked the warm weather, playing with Booker, and he didn't want to go up to cold weather in Boston. But Coach K called up Tatum and said, "Hey, just talk to Celtics. You need to go and work out for them again." So uh, I don't get it. I will say, like, Orlando is not like a basketball town. Like, you don't think basketball and be like, yeah, Orlando, Florida. That's what it's all
Yeah.
about. Um, but neither is like Oklahoma City. So I don't totally get it. Neither
Yeah.
are like desirable. Like if you said they want to play in Houston, I'd be like, okay, sure. Houston's like a historic franchise, lots of great players. Maybe he wants to play with Jalen Green. Other than that, they really don't have anyone on the team. I don't get it.
No, me neither. But if I were to bet on it, I think there's no way Chet would go to Houston. Um, if if the Magic don't take him, the Thunder will. You know?
I think there's no way he falls past number two.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
So I think we're
yeah. It
gonna
seemed to be, from what I'm seeing, it's Smith and Holmgren seem to be one or two. So
nothing on
Yeah.
Paolo. Paolo's very good too.
Oh yeah, maybe he'll be the Jason Tatum of the draft at 3.
It's funny. There's been many players who've got number three that are better than the guys who went one or two, but Tatum is the recent example, is the one you think of
Yeah,
because I don't know. You could think of 1985, where Michael Jordan goes number three. Dare I say, was the best player in the draft, but Hakeem Olajuwon went number one. It was a good pick.
yeah.
I don't think they regret taking Hakeem Olajuwon. Um, who knows? You could have a situation like that. Maybe not to the degree of two of the top 15 players of all time.
But what do you think about the current betting odds favored Jabari Smith? Like
Give me the odds. Do
Ryan,
you have the odds?
I don't have the odds, but I know he's favored. It's been back and forth a lot, but with Chet saying he wants to go to OKC, apparently it's been reported a lot. Whatever that means, that's something Pat McAfee likes to talk about a lot. It's like it's been reported. Like who the hell reported it? This is just leaks to try to get the other teams to not pick these players. But anyways, it's been reported that uh, the Magic want Jabari, so we'll see.
Yeah, let's actually just get to Jabari real quick. Uh, I mean, I think some of us have watched a lot of Auburn because Auburn played the Connecticut Huskies in the Bahamas
mhm.
this season,
Hmm.
and Auburn was consistently a team that was very interesting to follow in terms of they would surge and then they'd sort of die off, but they were still a team to watch during the tournament. In terms of what Jabari did at Auburn, uh, sort of maybe compared to what Chet did at Gonzaga, like how loaded was this Auburn team, Ryan? And do you think their lack of success to a degree was due to Jabari, or was it due to the coaching, like talent around him, a tough schedule? Like what was it? Why didn't if he should be the best player, number one in the draft? Why couldn't he? I know it's not as antiquated, it's not that simple, but like why couldn't he lead his team farther?
Yeah, I guess that is a good point. I mean, I remember to start the season, Auburn definitely exceeded expectations from what they were projected at the beginning of the year. I mean, they were a preseason, I think, 20th in the country, somewhere around there. And, based off the hype of, Jabari being a 5-star recruit coming in, sort of complementing their existing talent. Um, and I remember being very impressed with him, especially in the second half of the UConn game in the Bahamas. UConn was comfortably ahead in that game. It looked like UConn was going to win by 10, 15 points, but Jabari sort of led his team back. I think he got 19 of his 22 points in the second half that game, and you know and I believe Auburn also, I forget the player exactly, but I know one of their starters was out that game. So Jabari was sort of forced into a bit more of a leadership role, than I guess maybe he anticipated that early in the season. But um, yeah, so this is not, this was obviously a very talented team. Um, I guess you could make the arguments that he should have led them, further in the NCAA tournament. They were a disappointment losing, to Miami and not really in a close fashion in the NCAA tournament. But, you know, it's tough to say how much blame should go on him for that in the tournament, I guess. I don't know your
Sure.
thoughts, Peter.
No, it's very fair. I mean, the kid's 19. It's incredibly hard to win an NCAA tournament. Um, and it's hard to put it on the shoulders of a freshman. You don't see it a lot that the best player on your team is a freshman and you end up winning the tournament. Like it happens if you're a incredibly talented Kentucky team that with Anthony, I believe it's Anthony Davis team. But other than that, it's usually guys that are around at least more than 1 year. I mean, just looking down the draft, like Jaden Ivey is a guy who at least he spent 2 years at Purdue. But when I was reading about Jabari, what I found was very interesting. First of all, his dad was an NBA player, and he attributes a lot that he learned in his movesets to his dad. Like Mike Schmitz of ESPN, he's sort of like their draft guru, was asking him like, yeah, like your uh, pull up like turnaround mid range game, like who do you learn that from? Were you watching like Tatum and Durant and Dirk tape or Tracy McGrady? And he was like, oh, I learned it from my dad. I was like, okay, why not? But also another interesting like anecdote. They were asking him like what it was like to start games hot because I guess he did that. But he was saying it was a big adjustment going to Auburn because in like high school you had like 10 minutes of warm up, 10-15 minutes before a game. So you could get like no time in to do anything. So he would just do like wind sprints on the sideline and maybe shoot like 5 shots just so his body was ready. So his heart rate was up and he felt like he could make an impact immediately. And going to Auburn, he had that adjustment. Um, Kind of related. Donovan Mitchell talked about that a lot when he got into the NBA. They're like, "How are you so much better?" He's like, "I don't have to go to class. I can commit 100% on basketball. I have no distractions." So I think Jabari could do that. He's super fluid. So, but it's very interesting. We're talking about with Auburn, how he was sort of thrust into that role at times and he looked a little out of place. If he went to the Magic, he has a great supporting cast already. He has a lot of guards who can handle the ball and play make between Suggs and Markel Fultz, great playmaker, and Cole Anthony to a degree. And then he's got a lot of others high IQ guys on that team. Wendell Carter and Franz Wagner are there two that come to mind. Chuma Okiki, also an Auburn guy, I believe. Okiki.
As well as Mo, right? Mo Wagner's on the team too.
Mo Wagner, yeah, star of Hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Did you watch that, Ryan?
I have not seen that, no.
Oh, it's good. You guys got to go see it. I mean, it's on Netflix, but
uh, anyways, Hustle aside, Uh, Duncan, what do you think about if he went to Orlando? Because while he would basically be drafted to end up being the guy, the number one
Mhm.
guy, he'd be surrounded by a lot of support and sort of underrated guys that could not put too much pressure on him early.
I think like that it's tough. I think that would be a good fit for him, but when you look at OKC and their cast, I feel like they have not as deep of a supporting cast, but their cast is better with Shea and Giddy kind of leading that. They could have a not a big three, but like the three main guys versus like there's a little like with the depth, there's a different kind of stability in Orlando where you have a lot of guys you can count on, but it's going to be somebody else showing up every night. You're not sure who the guy is. If Jabari can be that guy, which we'll see, then maybe Orlando is the best fit for him. He gets there and he facilitates the people around him, and they facilitate him because they've got a lot of young guys on that team. Um, did you even mention Suggs in that? There's a lot of people like that would benefit from a playmaker and all of that. So I'm interested to see. I don't know what would be better for him, but I think maybe Orlando is the move for Jabari. Less less pressure than Chet, because Chet being the poster boy of the draft, there is a lot of pressure to perform as well. And Jabari, not that he's not the poster boy, he's very talented and he's gonna be good at basketball. He's still like might be less pressure on him in Orlando.
I mean, there's a good chance it could just line up being sort of the best situations for all of them. If Jabari goes to the Magic, he has people that could facilitate for him, but also a full team around him that takes some of the early burden off him and allows him to grow. And also, there's never a spotlight on Orlando. Never has been. I won't say never will be. And I mean,
Maybe Shaq, right? Was
they're
Shaq there?
yeah, Shaq was there for like 5 years. And they've had many great players. They've had Shaq, Tracy McGrady, Grant Hill, Penny Hardaway, Dwight
Yeah,
Howard, uh,
Horace Grant.
JJ
Dwight
Redick.
Howard,
Yeah,
yeah.
I slipped in JJ there. But I don't know. I feel like he could fit there, and he would have enough playmaking and help that it wouldn't be too much of a burden. If Chet went to Oklahoma City, then he would have probably the two best playmakers um, at the top of the draft that could help him out in both Shea and Giddy. And there absolutely zero pressure in Oklahoma City to compete with the amount of picks they have coming their way. And
Yeah,
if Paolo went to Houston, he's probably the guy who would be the most impactful starting next year. And they would need it because outside of Jalen Green, they don't have a lot. And they need someone who can make an impact and play make out of that bigger frame. It all could work out. But then again,
yeah,
we could get weird. Orlando could trade back to number 3, and Houston could go up and get Chet. We could get crazy.
yeah. I mean, that might be something like if you're a GM, and you want to keep your job. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the GMs to know if they're in hot water, but they have the top three picks because not because their team's been playing very well. So the safest thing could be to try to trade with Houston down to three. If Houston wants to go up, you get some more capital and you still get one of the three guys. Wouldn't be crazy.
Yeah, I haven't read a lot about teams' interest in trading up. I know there's been sort of murmurs around on if Orlando will do that. I think that is just Orlando keeping all their options open. You have the first pick.
Yeah,
You gotta look at every avenue. Um,
yeah,
in terms of the GMs, number 2, Oklahoma City, Sam Presti has maybe the safest job in pro sports at the GM position. He is like considered as good as they come, so he has no issues about taking a swing if you consider Chet a swing. Um,
yeah. I am curious to see what will happen.
there's just a lot of curiosity. These guys are all good. I think we just want to see them play, and
Yeah,
in a way, you can do no wrong. Um, but then again, one of them might just flop. Jabari Smith might wake up and learn how to not shoot anymore, and then he might just be like Michael Beasley or something. Um,
gross.
very gross. So let's
Yeah.
let's
Do you think? Sorry, if any of the other lottery picks who would be most likely to trade up that aren't in the top three? Because Sacramento, they kind of like we'll probably get into that a little later, but it seems like Ivy's their guy. Um, just Detroit, they've been making some moves right now to get some capital. Could they be a possibility to trade up? Like I don't know.
Hmm. I would like, Detroit could trade up to put a second guy with Cade. I mean, they just cleared a forward spot they just
Yeah.
traded Jeremy Grant, picked up a first from
And you were
Portland.
saying that like that's a weird time to do it right before the draft because it's not like a current pick. They have to be doing that with the draft in mind, or else they wouldn't do it the day before the draft. You
No,
know?
you're right. I was saying that on Portland's behalf, but that may be Portland punting on being able to trade up maybe, and I think maybe Detroit could be in a position. I was saying I think I was saying in a couple months ago that I think Jabari would be a great fit next to Cade. That might not happen, but Detroit could be in a position to trade up. They just got a
Yeah.
pick. They could use that. Um, that'd be. I'd say Detroit would be the one I would circle, armed with that extra first round pick.
Yeah. Be interesting to see. But what about the third guy? What do you think about Paolo?
Well, I just want to start off with like whenever you watch his tape, he looks really good, but I think you have to point out that Duke team was crazy. That Duke team was loaded with NBA talent, with AJ Griffin and Mark Williams
Yeah.
and Wendell Moore and the guard whose name I can't remember. Um, that team was super loaded. He had a lot of help. Um, I mean, Ryan, we saw that Duke team went really far into the tournament, um, going through some tough games, and Paolo shouldered a lot of that load, and you saw Coach K relied on him, and he he talked after a game. He was like, "Holy smokes! Like I'm coaching that guy. This guy's amazing." I mean, Coach K is a little much sometimes, but in, I
Yeah, it'll
think
be. I mean, Coach K is going to have a great night tomorrow. It'll be just sort of a fun culmination for him of his career, just seeing so many of his, his final players going into the draft. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I to your point, yeah, I do remember him kind of singing the praises of Apollo, especially during the tournament. So yeah, I mean, I think of the top three picks, I mean, I guess he has the most, I guess, typical like legit NBA size. He's got, I think he's like 250 pounds compared to the other two who are hovering around 200 right now. So I think you know, I think he's legitly up there in terms of talent with Chet and Jabari. Um, so
I think the size is it's such an advantage for him because he can get downhill, and that will translate to the NBA because it's a legit like 250 for him. Um,
Yeah. And that's the one drawback of Chet. It was like saying that he'll fill in, he'll fill in, he'll fill in. What if he doesn't? Like he may not need to, but at least with Paolo, like you're not worried about his body, you're worried about his basketball.
no, I'm not even that worried about the basketball. I mean, the more I watch Paolo, I'm like, what's the flaw? I'm like, this
Yeah,
dude, he's great at making passes out of tight situations, even when rolling downhill. He's asked to do a lot with the ball in his hands. He has like decent footwork to allow him to help on defense, and
yeah,
he's willing to shoot a three, and he has a decent stroke. I don't like the form as much as the other two guys, um, but it's still very good and capable. So I'm just trying to find like what's wrong with the guy and why he's not. It might be that with Chet you can see the ceiling, how you can be this sort of unicorn like talent. And Jabari, I think Jabari is more crafty. He's a bigger bag than Paolo, but it just every time I watch Paolo, I'm struggling to see what's not there, and that just might be the way it works out, where he's just a guy who's really talented who drops because teams salivate at other things, and that's just sort of how any draft works. Teams salivate at certain skills, so I think wherever he goes, he'll be really good right away. So I think the question is, can he be like a number one type scorer? with everything he's got around him. I think if you're gonna do a comparison, he's sort of like a poor man's Paul George in terms of his size and big frame. In terms being able to finish down low, being a little crafty off the dribble, and being a very good underrated 3-point shooter. I think again, Paolo needs to work on that shooting. I've said it before. I hate comparing guys to like Paul George. He's like a top 20 NBA player when healthy. But I don't know. I watched the tape.
Yeah.
The dude looks good.
I think the other thing that, like with Paolo, like some of his stats, like his 3-point percentage or lower, it's like 33%, which still isn't bad, but it's not like Jabari's like 43% or anything like that. Is that Paolo's a volume guy, he's taking a lot of shots because he can be that first scorer, and when you do, like Jason Tatum led the league in missed shots this year, and we're not saying that like as a negative thing against him. It's because he was a big volume scorer. And so I think like Paolo, even though his percentages might not always be there, he has a way of affecting like a team and helping a team win. Like Ryan, what do you think about like Paolo's effect in the tournament? Like even though that Duke team was stacked, do you think they could have gotten there without him?
Uh, I mean, yeah. I mean, there are, there's a number of first round, it's like 3 or 4 first round draft picks on Duke. So, um, I mean, it's tough to say, but I guess it's just kind of getting. I know he had his struggles in conference play. I'm remembering he kind of had, I think he was shooting at a higher clip at the beginning of the year. There was a bit of a dip in the middle of the season, but then he kind of bounced back in the tournament and really really kind of led Duke, to as far as Duke made it in the NCAA tournament. So yeah, I mean, I think just kind of his, I guess, leadership towards the end of the year. I don't know if Duke would have had sort of that person to kind of rally around, other than it was Coach K's last season, so that was sort of, I guess, an inspiration for the team. But you know, I think
Yeah,
he
I mean it
had
didn't
a.
work. They lost to
They
Carolina
lost,
twice.
yeah. So I guess on the other hand, you got sort of the pressure there that that maybe got in their
Yeah.
heads. But I guess with Paulo, and maybe not taking away from him, but I guess he's just, because there's so much talent on Duke. As a star, he might be shining a little less bright just because of the others around him. And you want to
Yeah.
be careful not to take that away when evaluating him compared to the others.
Yeah. No, I'd be interested in seeing like in the future, like our hindsight will be 2020, whether all these Duke picks will be because Paolo enabled everybody to do that, or whether Paolo was able to look like a star because they had four lottery picks or four first round picks on the team.
That's a very good question. I'm not going to say this, but I do think there are people that could spin it where all the talent Paolo played with at Duke is a negative, because sometimes you look at prospects. I don't know, for instance, Jaw's team at Murray State was not that talented. He carried them. And then when you're placed on a team with NBA level talent, even if the Grizzlies weren't obviously that good if they got the number 2 pick, but with NBA talent, the floor is way more open. There's way more spacing. Your bigs are just bigger. There's more size. Your shooters on the wing are way more capable, and it opens the game up to you. If Pal was playing with all this talent, there may not be as big of a jump. In fact, I'm not going to say it. So you could make the argument again that his teammates in Houston are worse than his Duke teammates. I don't think so. I think that's super underrating even like bad NBA players. Bad in quotation marks for all of you listening. Uh, but again, it could happen. So it could be that you don't see the biggest jump in talent from Duke to the NBA and Paolo that you might see with I don't know, Jabari, who I guess his teammates were not as good as Paolo.
Yeah. Well, one thing that makes me think of is Zion. I mean, Zion is not Paolo, but Zion was able to like translate what he did at college, like and just pick up right away when he came into the NBA. All star his second year, averaging like what 30 points per game. Like I don't even know. And maybe like playing with that talent at Duke could have a similar effect for Paolo. We'll see. I'm not saying he's Zion. I'm not saying he's going to be an all star next or in 2 years, but there is something to be said on both sides of that, being with a more NBA ready team versus having to carry your team and having all that talent.
Yeah, let's wrap the three of them up. We've talked about them for like 2 or 3 podcasts now. I think we fully hashed out those three guys. So let's just lock it in who we think will go number one and who we think will be the best of the three, because those are obviously not the same. I will start to let you guys have that question marinate for a second. I think Jabari Smith will go number one. I think there's been a lot of smoke. I think it'll just end up being Smith. And I'm going to go with my gut and just say Chet will be the best of the three. I believe in the specialness of the guy's talent and the impact he can make and how that can carry out to all the players on the team. Um, let's just go with you, Duncan.
Yeah, I think Chet will go number one. I think there's been a lot of smoke and mirrors, just him and Jalen Suggs' connection, like being reunited and having playmaker there. And then I think Jabari will go two. Yeah, and then Paolo three. I think next year, rookie of the year odds should be Paolo, most NBA ready, and I think he'll do the best in the following year. But I think in terms of career, I agree that Chet should be the best of the three in their career.
And
What do you
yeah,
think, Ryan?
I think I'm the same as you, Peter. So I think it looks like Jabari's going to go to Orlando number one, Chet two, and then Paulo at three. I think Duncan, you kind of made this point before, where I guess in terms of I guess just excitement for the fan base and branding, and then like Peter, your points on Chet's talent. I think Chet will be probably the most exciting and kind of interesting prospect to watch as he goes throughout his NBA career. I think he has the talent to really and just the uniqueness to be like the face of a franchise. So I think down the line we could be hearing about him a lot. In terms of immediate NBA readiness, I think I agree with you, Duncan, where I could see Paulo having a really good rookie season though. But I think long term, Chet is who I'm most excited to see how he progresses.
Glad we're on the same page, Ryan. um, I'm, I just I have a couple notes on a couple other guys. I'll just go quickly through if we have any thoughts, and we'll wrap up the draft section because I'm not going to act like I make a mock draft and I know who's going 28th and why he should go 28th and how he'll fit with that team. So just a couple of thoughts. Jaden Ivey out of Purdue. He's a 2-year college player. He played with some very big bigs at Purdue, and he's a 3-dimensional explosive guard. He gets downhill super fast. He has great hesitation moves. I like that he played with those bigs at Purdue because if he does go to Sacramento, as many people are theorizing, as sort of the best non top three player, so like the next guy going number four, he could play that similar high-low game with Sabonis. And the one thing I would say he needs to improve on is defense. He's just not very good at it. There's
Fair.
not a lot of other ways to say it. But he's saying he likes watching Davion Mitchell to emulate his defense. Funny because he would be his teammate in Sacramento. So it would be funny if he's drafted by Sacramento. It'd be like a full circle thing. And a fun fact about Ivy is that his dad and grandfather both played in the NFL corners, so maybe that's how he gets a lot of that explosive downhill speed.
Yeah.
And his mom is a basketball coach, so very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. During the NCAA women's tournament, there was a great promo with his mom and Jaden just talking about like how he modeled his game off of many of like the Purdue and Notre Dame greats because that's where his mom coached and played at. Um, so it's a cool story as well. I forget the exact names of who he was modeling his game after, but there's a lot of like sports influence in there. And that guy's so explosive. I saw some tape today. Oh my God. It's like 3 steps and he's from the 3 point line and like with the elbow in dunking it. Like he could have a case for being the steal of the draft at 4.
I mean, he gets the jaw comparisons,
Yeah.
and
I see it.
he had to do a lot for that Purdue team. And in like a pretty loaded Big Ten, Ryan, with Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, all being very competitive. But Purdue kind of led the pack there.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know if you've heard about this, Peter, but I mean, I am seeing a bit of uncertainty now with him going to Sacramento, which I find interesting that there's just a lack of contact right now. That he's worked out with. I'm seeing like the Knicks. He's worked out with Oklahoma City. He's worked out with Orlando, but no workouts with Sacramento. So I mean, it'll be interesting
Oh.
if he does fall. You know, I guess what are the reasons why Sacramento wouldn't go with him?
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I have a couple things on that. I've heard the Knicks are salivating. If the Thunder really like him, I think they should try to get him. They have all these future picks. If they really believe in him, why not lock him in? Get the guy in front of you instead of theorizing where those picks will go. I've heard the Pacers also like him at 6, so there's that. I guess if the reason you don't take him is why are you drafting another guard? You basically have drafted guards for the last 4 years, especially when you trade out Halliburton, who might be the best of all those guards, for Sabonis, and then you come back and draft kind of his replacement. Now they play differently. Tyrese is more of a playmaking guard, table setter. Ivy's more of an explosive guy, but it just like it's weird. And I think part of it can be attributed to Sacramento being weird. And this is what the Kings do. Nothing they really
They
take.
lose.
They don't have a plan. They lose. So it's tough to say. I think Ivy will be good wherever he goes. Oklahoma City is an interesting one if they want to load up on guards. Indiana, if they want to get a younger core, put him next to Halliburton. Wouldn't that be funny? Uh, I think there's a lot of scenarios where Ivy can work out, and I think he'll be a good pro. I think Shaedon Sharpe, moving on to him, is sort of the other side of the coin. Uh, he's Canadian. He's a extremely small sample size before he went to Kentucky, and then he didn't really play there. He's got more of a prototypical shooting guard size because he's 6'5". He's got also an insane vertical. If you've seen any of the few Shaedon Sharpe tape that exists out there, long arms, really big hands. His shot, like the form mechanics, kind of similar to Gary Trent Jr. So he should be able to be a good shot creator. He's a little slow with how he gets into his shot, so he would need to speed that up. His handle's kind of weak. I'd say Jalen Brown like handle because he cannot
Oh
dribble left.
no. That's an insult.
I made a TikTok about it. It's just he can't dribble left. Uh,
Yeah.
he likes to compare himself though to Devin Booker and Bradley Beal in the shot creating in the mid range and the way he stops and starts. I mean, who wouldn't compare themselves to Devin Booker, Bradley Beal? Very good players.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of questions about his motor and his effort on both ends. And so the question would be like, what team thinks they can fully unlock him and that super high upside and motivate him? I know there's been some comparisons to a degree to Anthony Edwards because Edwards' motor was questioned. Like, would he be a even better football player? Like, does he even really care about basketball? But their personalities are very different. Anthony Edwards is very joyful. He has a lot of fun in his press conference, sharp, it's kind of blunt, not a lot going on. So he is, if you're going to try to find the dark horse of the draft, he outlines it because there's not a lot of not a lot of tape. He was like the number one guy of his class, but he kind of just disappeared. um, but you could look back and be like Shaedon Sharpe, like why were we dumb? Like this guy is so good. But or he could just be another guy who's it'll be a trivia question, being who went number one and sucked or something like that. So if you have any thoughts about Sharpe, even though there's not a lot to say about him because there's not a lot known. The unknown is what's known about Sharpe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly, I don't know. Do you have anything, Ryan?
yeah. I mean, I think about him specifically, no. I guess it's a credit to what Calipari did at Kentucky this year, given they were expecting to have more of him, and Kentucky had such a great year, and definitely exceeded expectations in the SEC. But yeah, about him specifically, I you know I guess the big upside is just how young he is and how much room to grow. But I'm not super familiar with you know like any tape. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of age and some trivia question, I just had one for today, but can you guys name the oldest ever rookie in the NBA?
The play, like who the player
Yeah,
was.
yeah. He was undrafted. It was in 2012.
2012.
2012.
Yeah. He made his debut with the New York Knicks.
Um, I know this.
He was,
I know this player played for them. I don't think he debuted. It wasn't
was a
Jose Calderon, was it?
he was a two-time All Euro League selection when he played in Spain.
Spain.
Got Mr. Pablo
Oh,
Prigioni.
Pablo Prigioni. Oh, I
Prigioni.
was.
He was 35 years old as an NBA
Oh
rookie.
my gosh.
That's
I was gonna
crazy.
start rattling off other international players. I was gonna go like Gallinari, Grievous Vasquez, just start throwing those names out. But wow, Prigioni. Yeah, not a long
Yeah.
NBA career.
No, I mean he was in the NBA for 5 years ish. It's his playing career actually, maybe not NBA career, but um, it's still a 35-year-old rookie. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And also, I saw something interesting while we were talking. Um, for those of you all, like right before we started, we got the Woj bomb about Grant being traded, and that clears up around like 45 million in cap space for the Pistons.
Over the next couple
And
of years, not this year.
not this year.
No, he doesn't get paid that much. He probably gets paid. They probably
I
clears
think
up.
he got signed to a 124 year.
He does not get paid 30 million a year. I bet he gets paid like 20 something a year. He has like 2 years left. That's what I would
All right.
think.
Well, Twitter may have misled me, but the thing they had afterwards was DeAndre Ayton to the Pistons,
Mm. He signed a
which
he
honestly,
signed a 3-year, $60 million contract. So, but
yeah,
I'd like Isaiah Stewart in Detroit. He's played well. I like him as their center. Uh,
yeah,
but sure, why not?
yeah. We shall see, because DeAndre Ayton's not playing in Phoenix again next year.
Pro-
Also, I don't want
Probably
him. I
not.
don't want a player that quits on the team in the last game of a series. Like, stay away from Charlotte, DeAndre.
I've been theorizing about some sort of trade where Al Horford goes out and DeAndre Ayton comes back to the Celtics, and then you got like a really young, talented center who could grow along with the younger core. Probably not going to happen.
Yeah,
Um,
no,
yeah, Ayton I think is really, really interesting what happens to him. But
yeah.
unless you,
I'm also excited to see what the Hornets do tomorrow. For those that might not follow the Hornets as closely as I do, their coach Kenny Atkinson was never truly the coach. He didn't sign the contract, and after the Warriors won, he was like, I know I accepted this job, but never mind. I want to stay in the Bay Area. So Michael Jordan is frantically looking for next head coach. It looks like it'll probably be Mike D'Antoni. But the draft is tomorrow, and the Hornets do not have a head coach, and they haven't signed or traded Mason Plumlee, who's expiring soon, and. So I am excited to see what happens tomorrow. Nervous and excited.
it's so tough for an organization when you don't have the head coach locked down. Like he's a face of the franchise in many ways, and so without having that secured, I mean, if you're a prospect, do you want to go to a place where you don't even know who's going to be, in talking to you every day?
Yeah,
It's really tough. I don't necessarily blame Kenny for wanting to stay in the nice situation he has in Golden State, but it's not a good look pulling out of that Charlotte job.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't blame him, but if you had a doubt, don't accept the job beforehand. Yeah. We'll see what happens. However, I know we didn't have this in the agenda, but what do you guys think of those Huskies possibly getting drafted? I saw Whaley had another Hornets workout. He's one of few people to have two Hornets workouts. He's from Gastonia, right outside of Charlotte, and he also had another LA workout with the Lakers. And both Tyrese and RJ have also had a couple workouts here and there. What do you guys think?
I mean, I've heard good things about Martin, potentially being, I've heard even as high as like a late first round pick. I mean, I feel like that seems unlikely, but, I think of the potential draft picks, I feel like Martin seems to fit the best in the NBA with his style of play.
Mm-hmm.
I think I really I'd love to see Cole in the NBA. I think he has the heart, and he's just one of my favorite players ever at UConn. But
Yeah. He's got that dog in him.
yeah, exactly. So
Very high dog.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think, and I'm excited to hear Whaley's getting so many workouts too. I didn't even know that. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, because Isaiah Whaley averaged like 2.5 blocks at UConn. Like teams look at that defensive wings slash centers who can shoot the ball sometimes
mhm.
are kind of a luxury in today's
They,
game. So although he's not like the best at that, he's not
he
bad.
hit a few
So see,
threes, kind of as a shocker
yeah,
this
some
year.
big ones
Yeah,
too.
exactly. So
I don't love his jumper. It's a little like clunky, but I think Whaley is probably like a guy who could get signed to a like a 2-way contract. RJ
Yeah,
could be a 2-way contract guy. I do think a team could fall in love with Martin's like toughness and his sort of projection as like a Cody Martin type wing.
yeah. I was about to say like Martin reminds me of the Martin twins.
Yeah, it's like a tough guy who can just bully a guy and really focus on taking away something. Although he's not as good defensively as the Martin guys, but he's a little better as a playmaker. I think a team could take a shot at him in the second round.
Yeah. Currently, as of like yesterday's ESPN mock, none of the UConn guys are projected in the 58 picks, but we shall see. There's a lot of signing that happens right after, and we'll see if one of the guys gets on a team.
Yeah, only 58 picks because Miami and Chicago lost second round picks due to tampering with the signings of
Yeah.
Kyle Lowry and Lonzo Ball. Very interesting.
oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, to a degree, taking away a second round pick is like a slap on the wrist
Yeah.
because the hit rates aren't there.
But Nikola Jokic.
And Draymond Green, yeah. Well, we're gonna wrap up this draft section now. We're gonna do like just a little bit of final talk. Any thoughts remaining? And so we'll do that after the break. And we're back from the break. Thank you for coming on, Ryan. It was great having him in to have a little more insight about some of the draft stuff. I mean, I don't watch as much like Auburn or Gonzaga stuff. I kind of just tune in once the tournament comes and I watch the top guys.
Yeah, it's really hard to judge those players based off that because the only time I saw Cade play was when he was kind of like a letdown in the tournament last year, and then did pretty well in the NBA. So tournament doesn't always mean success in the NBA.
Yeah, and I mean, you know how many times like you look up some like highlight reel and you're like, oh, this guy's so good. But then again, if you watch everyone's highlight reels, they all look good. So
Yeah,
being able to watch more games and seeing when they're playing well and bad and throughout the course of a whole game is obviously way more valuable.
true.
I don't think we made an all conference finals team. That might have been, we maybe did that draft instead. So, but I wanted to do an all finals team of the best performances, players from the finals. I'll go through my team. I know Duncan might have some tweaks to it, but For the guards, I have Stephen Curry, obviously, and
Yeah,
Jaylen Brown. For the forwards, I have Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green, and at center, I have Al Horford. Draymond's stats are not that great. I mean, he's averaging 6, 8, and 6, like 1.7 steals, zero point 0.7 blocks, which is like solid all around, not like incredible, but 33% shooting, twelve and a
yeah,
half percent from three, 58.3 from the free throw line. But what he was able to do in the last couple games it really jumped off the page. I mean, in game 6 in Boston, the closing game, he had 12, 12, and 8, 2 steals, 2 blocks. He was plus
yeah,
16, a 13-point win. I mean, he was just all over the place on both ends.
yeah.
And I think a lot of his impact isn't even felt in the box score in terms of leadership and and everything he means for that team.
Yeah, that's my only problem with your lineup is Draymond. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying that he's definitely out of it or not, but like with those averages, that last big performance, like really, like if you take the average to just the first 5 games instead, I'm sure it's like much lower. And he had a great game 6, and then again, same for Al. Al had a great game 1, which I think is part of the reason why he's on your all finals team, even though like he had some ups and downs throughout the rest of it. So I think if I were to change it and like do a deep dive into the stats, I would try to fit Kevon Looney in there somewhere because I think he had a very solid performance all around. He was consistent, um, but then again, at the same time, he wasn't like a game changer like Draymond. So it's tough, but maybe if there were 6, it would be Kavan in there, and then uh, Draymond, Allen, him would share minutes.
My only thing, like Looney was really good. And I think he was underrated in what he did, but he came off the bench in the last 3 games in which Golden State won all three. Like he didn't crack the
True.
starting lineup, but he played very well. And Al's splits are ridiculous: 60.5 from the field, 62.5% from three. A
Yikes.
lot of that was from his superhuman performance in Game 1 in Golden State. They had the resurgent comeback. He had 26, 6, and 3 on 9 of 12 shooting, 6 of 8 from three. But uh, you know, I it was there was a part of me that was like, should 2 Celtics make this team? I'm not sure, but Al, I think, carried them in a lot of places and was arguably their most consistent player, like throughout the duration of the series.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if if I'm the Celtics, I want Al back just for like the guy he is. You know, the presence he uplifts his teammates. He's got a very like like Ted Lasso esque like he's got the mind of a goldfish. They'll be down, but he gets that board and pushes it and pushes the pace right away, which is always something that helped the Celtics get going if they had like a when the Warriors went on their streaks and everything like that. So I think he does deserve a spot on that team, even though you know in game 2 he didn't attempt a three after going 6 of 8 the game before. But
Yeah, I think Jason Tatum needs to have the mind of a goldfish sometimes as he
yeah,
bemoans some calls down the floor.
yeah,
Um,
I think he's setting himself up for like a good career, good next year's. I know people shouldn't compare him to Jordan because he's not Michael Jordan,
no one
but
is. The only
no,
person you should compare to him are probably Kobe Bryant, because Kobe emulated Jordan and he tried to be like him in many ways, and
yeah,
LeBron James, because he, even so, that's like they play very differently.
yeah.
But those are,
It's
the two
that
goats.
greatness. Yeah,
Yes,
that
it's the
greatness.
greatness that should be compared.
Yeah, yeah. Jason Tatum is no Michael Jordan. He had a great season, just not a great finals. And I think honestly that's some intrinsic pressure that he put on himself that is not going to get him a spot on this all finals team.
No,
Just like off the bat of game 1, like remember he got the ball twice, bricked it twice. I think that set the tone for the entire series.
very easy to say now. But
True.
I don't have any issues with. Well, I have issues with him played. I'm not worried about him. I think he'll be
No.
fine. He's too talented. He works too hard.
Yeah.
One thing I found very interesting when making this, I pulled the best game that each player played. Usually, it meant they had the highest game score, but that pretty much lined up with their best performance. The stat usually, translated well. Each of their players had their best game in different games. The
Mm,
only one not represented was game 2. I presume Steph probably had the highest game score.
yeah,
But like Al Horford's best game, game 1. Uh, Jaylen Brown's
yeah,
best game, game 3. Curry's best game, game 4. Wiggins, game 5. Draymond, game 6. So I kind of like that this team also like tells the story of the finals. And if you look at some of those box scores, you can maybe get a feel for how the game went. Just like a
yeah,
cool little tidbit.
yeah. But I think for the rest of the Steph, Jalen, and Wiggins, like that's a lock. There's not really an argument for anything else there because Jalen, if the Celtics managed to win, probably would have been Finals MVP unless Tatum had like single handedly wanted them game 6 and 7.
You could give it to Horford.
That's true. Yeah, Finals MVP is weird.
It is. Um, my prediction before the series was A, a Celtics win, but B, it was Jaylen Brown as
Yeah,
the
I remember
team's
that.
MVP. So, and he played well, and he played 38.8 minutes per game, which is a lot, and that's pretty much what he played for every game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So big load he had to shoulder. I mean, his percentages for a high volume and considering he kind of played badly at times. 43.1% from the field, 34% from three, 80.6% from the free throw line. There is some room to be desired, but I think he played pretty consistent and like granted it was a quiet 34 he had in game 6 because the team lost.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, he just had good individual performances.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for the Celtics in the future as well as the Warriors in the future. They'll keep on funding the NBA with their luxury tax. I mean, I wonder how much they'll go up next year because it seems like they might just sign everybody to the max and just stomach it, but we'll see.
Yeah, the Celtics, how much between their trade exceptions, they'll be able to dive deeper into the luxury tax. I think all signs point to them, uh, paying up and spending to acquire more talent, which I think is necessary based off the way the team played.
What position do you want?
I think I need another wing. I need another wing who can play with energy and to provide some more playmaking and shooting because you saw Tatum and Brown just shouldered so much load. They played so many minutes. There are some guys who could project into the trade exceptions they have. OG Anunoby, uh,
Oh, that'd be good.
Marcus Morris, um,
Miles
like
Bridges?
Kevin Herter, Duncan Robinson. Miles Bridges would be a sign and trade to be a little clunky, but I think there's room that they could make something work, and I'd love to have another quality guy in there.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. I think Grant Williams has he'll either improve a lot next season and could become that guy for you, or we won't be hearing much about Grant Williams in the future.
It could be, and depending on who they are targeting, uh, if they need to give up a player, Grant could be he's one that holds more value than a lot of other guys.
Yeah,
Um, so again, we will see how that goes. So
yeah.
wrapping up the show, we will read last week's Q&A and poll. Again, these are found on the Spotify page for every episode. So if you want to hear your answers read out, you can listen to us on Spotify and reply to us there, or you cannot listen to a Spotify and just go to Spotify and leave the Q&A and poll. I'm not going to judge you where you listen to your podcast. So our Q&A question was, can Jason Tatum be the best player on a championship team? I thought it was a pressing question. It's kind of like a first take sort of question. I think the answer is yes, but he was
I
the best
agree.
player and they lost the championship. Uh, our own co-host Garrett Collins said, absolutely, Tatum's future is bright. Didn't really think he
Fair.
would answer in any other way. Our own Duncan DeFranch said, yes, Grant Williams needs to be the eighth man, though. Sure. So you think
I think it'd be.
Peyton Pritchard needs to play a bigger role than Grant? Because I'd
I think
say
so.
I
I think when there's too much pressure on Grant, um, it just doesn't work. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, I think what that was going with was what you were saying. They need one more player to rely less on Grant Williams, and then hopefully that will help him shine a little more. But who knows?
That's a good point. I think he was sort of overwhelmed at times in the spotlight of the finals.
I agree.
And then Matt Correa said, for sure, expectations were a little high, I think, this season. Dude's only 19. Very good point. I mean,
Yeah.
younger than Keegan Murray if he's
Yeah,
19.
he can't even enjoy the champagne, so what's the point in winning?
I know. And raising a child, I mean, just a lot for him. Our poll was who is the second best player for the Warriors in the finals. Of course, that being best player was Steph Curry. And it was unanimously Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I didn't think there'd be any other options. I mean, if people wanted to vote for Otto Porter Jr., they could have. I gave him the option.
That's funny.
Yeah, Wiggins was great. So
Yeah.
unless you have anything else left, Duncan, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you all
No.
for listening, and we should come at you after the draft. Again, the draft is tomorrow night, Thursday, June 23rd, probably at like 8 p.m. I don't know, ESPN. Just look it up. We all have phones. So, yeah, we will see you next week.